Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew Rowe, and I am the CEO of the Campaign for Wool in Canada and its parent organization, the Canadian Wool Council. Bienvenue, mesdames et messieurs. I am coming to you live from the UK, just here for some other Wool Month events, but a very happy Wool Month to everybody, and welcome to this very special edition of the Spinning Yarn Speaker Series. For those of you who are regular participants, you'll know that the Spinning Yarn Speaker Series was created by the Campaign for Wool as a way of providing an opportunity to hear from interesting speakers working throughout the Canadian wool value chain and learn a little bit more about the work of the Campaign for Wool and the Canadian Wool Council here in Canada. Because it's Wool Month, I do have a lot to update you on. I'm going to try and keep it very short because we're all here to hear Sasha and learn about her incredible business and her beautiful coats. But I'll just interject just a little bit on some of the activities that you will have already seen that we have undertaken as part of Wool Month, and others that are coming down the pipeline. So the most important, of course, right now, you may have many of you who receive point of sale kits. Those will be heading out very soon. We have also been releasing our the first trailers and now the first film of this year's Fabric of Canada series latest edition, which is the one that is available now, is called Shearing Ontario's Shetlands, and is a wonderful story about the shearing process on a lovely farm west of Toronto. We will also be revealing in the coming days and weeks trailers and a full film for our second edition, which is about an Alberta operation that uses sheep to maintain a solar array. So using sheep in green energy production, and obviously that wool goes right into the same system that we use for our carpet and upholstery projects. So we're very excited to be able to show off that. The Fabric of Canada series, again, is part of our effort to rebrand and revalue Canadian wool by telling those stories from of the Canadians who raise wool and transform it. We currently, as well, if you're in the need for a new sweater, the Campaign for Wool knitwear collection is available now. Actually, there is a coat as well, but I won't say anything about the coats because I don't want to compete with Sasha. But there's some gorgeous sweaters produced by Line Knitwear available through our retail partners at Holt Renfrew. And again, a portion of the proceeds for every one of those pieces goes right back to our Wool Innovation Fund and is reinvested in the Canadian wool industry. So treat yourself. buy one, maybe two. I'll ask Alyssa to include some links during our conversation to both the Fabric of Canada films and the Holt Renfrew capsule collection. We will also be unveiling very soon the latest designs that have been produced for our 100% Canadian wool rug capsule collection that is being designed by Hereditary Chief Janice George of the Squamish Nation in British Columbia. You'll know Chief George and her partner Buddy from our Fabric of Canada film on Coast Salish weaving. And if you haven't seen that one, please check it out because it's an incredible story about wool and its important use in the ceremonial and traditional garments of Canada's First Peoples, and the added fascinating story of what they did before wool was introduced, relying on Rocky Mountain goats, as well as a now extinct breed of woolly dog. So all of that is, of course, in the Coast Salish film. But taking that kind of a step forward, we have this upcoming capsule collection with Burrup Brothers of British Columbia and Colin Campbell, one of the largest rug companies in Canada, and certainly the leading player on the West Coast. And that will be where, again, if you've got a bare patch of floor that you need some to jazz up, you'll be able to select from 3 different designs, and we'll be unveiling those designs in the not too distant future. And those are going to be made again of 100% Canadian wool that is processed and spun into yarn at the Briggs and Little Mill in New Brunswick. So again, this is now our second rug project. So again, just increasing the options and availability of Canadian wool as a piece that you can use in your own home and to beautify your home. Carpet being, of course, one of the great uses for Canadian wool. So those are a few of the projects going on. As I mentioned, if you do sell wool products and you have not already put your name in for our point of sale kits, please do so. You can submit your information through the website and we will send that to you free of charge. We've got some great content this year with the Keep Warm with Wool branding. Again, updated images and hashtags and slogans to, again, re-engage consumers and educate them on the wonders of wool, which of course I don't need to outline to you because you're here because you're already fans. So we thank you for that. So for our conversation today, I'm pleased to be introducing Sasha Jardine. Sasha is the campaign for wool personified in terms of what we look for and the kinds of brands and companies that we work with, just celebrating what is possible when you use beautiful, natural, sustainable wool. And one of the things that struck out to me when I first started this work almost 10 years ago was when you would speak to designers and if they had free reign, regardless of what kind of product they were creating, they all said if they were just able to make something for themselves or they would just wanted to make something that was beautiful, they would start with wool because wool gives you structure, gives you texture, gives you color, unlike any other natural fiber. And it's a designer's delight. And I think you can see that fact put to its full effect in Sasha's collection of beautiful, brightly colored coats that celebrate all that is possible when you have beautiful wool. So I don't want to take too much away from your presentation, so I'm happy to pass it over to Sasha to tell us a little bit more about herself, her brand, and her beautiful coats. Over to you, Sasha.
All right, Matthew, thank you for that. I feel like I don't need to say anything else. Thank you everybody for having me today. It's such an honor to be speaking with you. I am really excited to tell you a little bit about STE.MARG.SCOT and my dream to brighten those dark winter days and also to swing the pendulum back to natural and renewable using wool in our outerwear. So for me, this journey began back in 2019, where I was really excited about my new floor length puffer coat. And then I became disappointed because it dawned on me that the majority of people in Toronto, at least, were wearing some version of this coat. And what was interesting is the New York Times captured this pain point with this headline, "What if a winter coat wasn't just a workhorse?" So it's the idea of, can our coats do more for us than just keep us warm? And unfortunately for me, the search to find that dream coat was going to become a little bit more complex because of my background. So I've taught students climate and environmental science for over a decade, and I'm a published author in drug research, and I have a background in biochemistry. When I'm outside of my work, I love fashion and I love color. And, while color on its own is definitely a worthwhile purpose, it wasn't the aha moment behind STE.MARG.SCOT. My aha moment came when I realized that the majority of clothing that we consume and the majority of outerwear as Canadians that we consume is made of plastic. So finding that warm and beautiful coat became something bigger than just the coat. It became a mission to wake consumers up from the complacency surrounding synthetics. So we know that fashion is completely addicted to fossil fuel derived synthetics. These are some of my photos from various outerwear departments in Toronto. And these are high-end coats, and you can see that it's rows upon rows of synthetic garments. And despite everything we know about polyester and other fossil fuel derived materials, the production volume of polyester continues to increase by millions of tons year over year. And I think this is why the St. Marg.SCOT story matters right now. Unfortunately, in this race to do everything cheaper and easier, we've lost sight of the efficacy of natural materials like wool. And the reality is, wool has kept us warm and it can continue to do so for centuries. So why us? Why St. Marg.SCOT? Well, we are here to bring back this iconic, nostalgic heritage coat in a really joyful way, using circular materials and renewable and sustainable materials such as wool and wood. We have no plastic or metal parts. We use no toxic dyes, so everything is non-toxic, and it's actually EU flower label certified. Even our toggles are treated with a natural hemp oil that is sourced just outside of Toronto. Where we can, we support local farmers and their industry. And a few components of our coat are handcrafted, such as our toggles. They're carved by a female woodturner in Toronto. Many of our business partners are owned by women, so our wood artist is female, and even the rope that holds our toggles in place is from Wave Fiber Mill. And our coats this year will be cut and sewn by a female-owned production house. We try to source everything locally, our wool, or locally or near shore. So our wool comes from the UK, and that's very important for us because it means that there's a certain level of animal, environmental, and social thresholds that are respected. And we know that our workers and our partners are getting paid fair wages. And lastly, because color is so important to our company, we support Vibe Arts Charity, which brings local arts programs to underserved communities. Now, again, you guys all know why fossil fuel derived materials such as polyester, nylon, and acrylic are harmful. But these are some of the things that really swung the pendulum for me and made me committed to what I'm doing with St. Marg.SCOT. So if we think about the sheer scale of fossil fuels used to produce polyester, so 61 million tons of polyester was produced from fossil fuels. This is over half of the global fiber share market in 2020. So, you know, some I guess effects of this scale alone. In Colorado, New Mexico, and Wyoming in 2019, there were over 23,000 barrels of oil spilled and over 170,000 barrels of wastewater spilled. So all of this has detrimental effects on the surrounding population and the environment. And so even with processing, some people assume that polyester garments have more efficient processing, but it's not the case. For example, a cotton t-shirt uses half the amount of CO2, or emits half the amount of CO2 compared to a polyester shirt. So it's not entirely efficient during production as well. And finally, at the end of production, we know that almost 60% of all clothing produced in a year ends up in a landfill, and more than half of that is polyester. So that's a lot of plastic garments leaching microplastics into those soil ecosystems. And of course, the elephant in the room is microplastics. So just from normal washing our synthetic garments, the stat is that there's 1 grocery bag worth of synthetics released into our water every 3 weeks. And the Ellen MacArthur Foundation estimates that by 2050, there'll be more plastic in the ocean than fish by weight, which is quite alarming for me to even imagine. So why wool? You know, wool is not a perfect solution. There is no perfect solution, but I love this quote coming from Aristotle: nature does nothing in vain. You know, sheep were one of the first domesticated animals, and nature has been perfecting wool for over 10,000 years. And, you know, so much so that we know that NASA places its astronauts in wool underneath their spacesuits. So there's no other functional fiber on the market. And you know, fortunately, wool is starting from a good place. It is not a natural carbon sink, and in fact, it has more carbon content than other natural fibers such as cotton and wood pulp, which is really great. When we have regenerative farming, wool can be climate beneficial and even carbon negative. So there's been a few studies to show that. There does seem to be this natural bottleneck, at least with pasture grazing. And the one concern, the one major concern that you'll see publicized a lot when it comes to sheep farming, is methane reduction. And we do have some solutions to mitigate this, such as breeding low emission sheep. And this has to do with splicing and reducing the function of that enzyme that produces methane during that digestion. And also this red seaweed diet that's become quite popular, and several notable individuals like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos have invested in this red seaweed program, which has been shown, a small dose has been shown to really drastically cut down on that emission of enteric methane. And of course, again, this is all things that we know as lovers of wool, but these are things that really stood out to me. Wool lasts longer. It can be recycled, even though it's 1 to 3% of the total fiber share. It is the most reused or recycled fiber there is. It supports local industry. And for me, this is really important, this last point, that it's biodegradable. So it breaks down in 3 to 4 months to naturally fertilize soil. So we get a lot of questions about our name. So where does St.MARG.SCOT come from? So St.MARG.SCOT is the abbreviation for St. Margaret of Scotland. She is, or she was, the queen consort of King Malcolm III during the 11th century. And the story goes that when she showed up on the shores of Scotland, she looked around and she thought she had to dress the Scottish people in brighter colors so that they might have a greater sense of joy and pride. And she tried to do that. She was also canonized as a saint because she would wash the feet of the poor. And we were inspired by her service to the poor, but also inspired by the idea that she understood the power of color and fashion to transform people on a deeper level way back in the 11th century. And I'm a big believer in the idea that classic never goes out of style. And so, of course, our coat is rooted in this heritage duffel and pea coat style. And it's really interesting to see that many of our customers fondly remember the duffel or pea coat that their parents or grandparents once owned. So that recognition is really lovely to see when speaking to our customers. And interestingly, one of my customers that I met yesterday, she emailed me these photos of her mom's coat that she still adores today. This is a 55-year-old wool coat. And if you can see on the label here, it says Ontario. And I believe this company, the Old Mill, is still around. And I think what's really interesting about St.MARG.SCOT is we are really trying to focus on nostalgia through this lens of gender, inclusivity, and fluidity. So we really believe that everybody can enjoy color and everybody can enjoy wool. And even though we're a new company, we just launched in January, the response has been really positive so far. We've had several unpaid features from Style Canada, from Cityline and The Social, and we've had conversations with Elle Canada, and just recently we were nominated as the Best New Emerging Brand by the CAFA Canadian Fashion Arts Awards. So that was really exciting to get that nomination. And although we've had some success, to starting out, there have been some challenges. So number one, my dream was to source Canadian wool for these coats, but it was very difficult to find woolen cloth onshore. So our wool comes from Yorkshire, England. There's a lot of complacency around synthetics. Most people today believe that the most functional winter coat is a synthetic one. So there's a lot of discussion around that. And also there's a lot of greenwashing around the idea that vegans is equal to sustainable. And so that's a huge conversation within itself. And, whether or not recycled plastic bottles or recycled polyester is a solution, is a sustainable solution to the synthetic problem. My big dream one day is to revive the connection between Canadian wool and luxury Canadian outerwear. And to that end, I've started working with the Canadian Wool Council. I'm actually on the policy committee, and the dream is to make our coats with Canadian wool. And I've already begun talking to Jane about this, and there is the development of this supply chain. So it is possible that next season our coats will be made of Canadian wool, which is extremely exciting. And just to give you an idea of where we're going as a company, our first coat is the Heritage Coat, and that is up here. We've released 2 additional coats this year, the bowie, which goes to the knee, and the tailor, which goes to the ankle. And then with all of our scraps, because they're so precious and we don't want to waste anything, we make these hand-cut floral brooches, which according to Vogue is the accessory of the year. And we also started making these wool crossbody bags. I've noticed that at least in Toronto, there's a lot of people walking around with synthetic crossbody bags. And I thought, why not wool? Why not all of these glorious colors? And for me, somebody who wears glasses, I call it the essentials bags because it has a built-in compartment for your glasses, phone, and cards. And it comes in 38 colors. And all of our colors this year are inspired by Henri Matisse's Open Window. So this was painted over 100 years ago, and it's still an icon for modernism, and it's renowned for its vibrant palette. And lastly, this year, our campaign, similar to the council, is Choose Wool This Winter. Of course, the most sustainable garment the most sustainable garment is the one you already own. However, if you are considering purchasing a new coat, consider something that is renewable, something that's wool, and something that is locally made. That is our message this year. And lastly, I'll leave you with this. So this is a local fashion artist named Betsy Elias, and she illustrated our dream and our story, the idea that, once upon a time we lived in close relationship, in close harmony with the land. And then after the Industrial Revolution, we lost sight of where our clothes came from. We became disconnected from nature. And our dream is to reconnect Canadians and the world to wool and create wool and woolen outerwear that awakens a sense of wonder and reconnects us to the earth. And with that, thank you so much, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Sasha. That was great.
You're welcome.
Wonderful presentation.
So,
go ahead.
Thank you. We will take questions. We can take them in the chat, or you can put your hand up and me and Matthew will moderate. For comments, usually takes a minute or two for people to get warmed up.
I mean, I guess I'll start off as take my privileges. What brought you into fashion in general? Why? We've seen your beautiful products. What inspired you personally to want to be a fashion designer?
I think honestly, it came from seeing that gap in the market and wondering for years and years why it was so difficult to find a coat that looked a little bit different and was made of something different. I've always loved that heritage coat and that duffel coat, but I never purchased one because it was never quite my style. I love things that are colorful and bright, and there's a little bit of whimsy to them and a little bit of edge. And it was a bit too traditional. So I guess the goal here is to modernize or reimagine those heritage coats for, maybe a consumer who is more focused on fashion and just wants something with a little bit more edge to it.
Wonderful. And watching the weather reports here in the UK, I admire St. Margaret for her mission to bring color to Scotland, because they certainly have more than enough rain in fall. So it could be very easy to just bundle up with whatever is closest, but to bring a little color and style will certainly help to brighten some of those rainy days.
Definitely. I think the stat is something like 15% of the Canadian population and 20% of the American population suffer from some form of seasonal depression, and color is a form of therapy. And so there is data to show that surrounding ourselves with little pops of color can help just elevate our mood throughout the day. So there's definitely that component.
Wonderful.
I'm just going to get started on questions. So Margaret is asking, what are we looking at time-wise for using Canadian wool in the process?
Possibly by next September. So we have the wool. It's just a matter of me deciding on the colors and then getting it processed. So the mill that we're using is in Connecticut. And so, so I think you know, they have everything in place, and it's just a matter of us finalizing.
It's really exciting.
It's so exciting. I actually reached out to the mill in Yorkshire to figure out what type of sheep the wool comes from, and they said Corriedale. So,
Yep.
so that's interesting. And I know as Canadians we have those breeds, so very exciting.
You did touch on this a bit, but Karen is just asking what's involved with 100% Canadian wool next year for your production. Is it a large process? And yes, it is, but I'll let you
You know what? I
answer that
think
in
Jane,
detail.
is Jane on the call?
No, she messaged me. Unfortunately, she had to leave in the middle, but yes, she knows the long process of it.
Yeah, no, so Jane she has been the one who has helped me figure out this process, and so I think this mill process it's one of the last few mills in the US. To our knowledge, we don't know of a mill in Canada that can make this type of melt-in cloth. So they are the last mill, and they're not terribly far away from us here in Toronto. And so they have all the processes and the machinery in place to make this cloth. So it's just a matter of us getting the wool to them.
Are your coats sewn in Canada?
Yes, yeah, right here in Toronto.
Wonderful.
This is a great question from Julia. Love what you're doing. How are your coats dyed?
So they're piece dyed in the UK. So the mill that we work with, they're a small family-owned mill that's been around since the 1800s, and they have a dye house that they work with. And this dye house, they are really focused on responsibility. So they use low temperature water, they reuse their water, and it's all non-toxic, Ecotex, EU flower approved dyes. So I think the EU flower label, their regulations are a bit more stringent than ours, even in North America. So there are no azo compounds or heavy metals. So it seems like it's the most low impact option that we can get for synthetic dyes.
Thank you. And Jane just rejoined. I think she's
Oh.
on the road, but oh no, she's back.
I'm actually back home. I was in the process of getting a parking ticket, so I had to
Oh no.
I was illegally parked. I'm sorry, Earth. Anyway.
Hi, Jane.
Hi, Sasha.
Yeah, so I was just telling everybody about the idea that we might be using Canadian wool in the next round and how exciting that is.
Yeah. There's a lot more possibilities, I think, happening with Canadian wool than we had previously ever thought. There's some prototyping going on. We're working with some new experts, I'll say in quotes. And I'd say we've learned a lot in just the last few weeks and months on what's possible with Canadian wool on the garment side. So if there's specific questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I think Romy has her hand up.
Yeah, Romy. Oh.
Hi, everyone. I don't know if I necessarily have a question, but I just want to say kudos, Sasha. It's so amazing that someone like you has taken this jump as a sheep farmer and being involved in some of the more artisan side of things. It's so nice that someone has invested properly to create like a product that's actually going to use more than a few fleeces, which is really awesome. And yeah, I know someone had asked about like the mills in Canada. Like, this is not some type of fabric that we can make in Canada. No one has the capabilities, but at least, yeah, there's this other mill in Connecticut, which is basically, it's only a few hours away. So that's pretty cool that we can get it that local. So excited for what you're doing. And I think we have so much potential for Canadian wool. We just need people like you to actually do that like big jump in and invest in the industry. So great job.
Thank you, Romy. And I really have been, I have to say, I've been relying on the Campaign for Wool and the Canadian Wool Council to learn as much as I can about wool and sheep in Canada. I listened to your podcast, Romy, The Curious Sheep, so a big fan of that. And I have Anna Hunter's book. I bring it everywhere. I love it. I couldn't put it down. And so there's so much to learn, and I love this community. And I'm excited to work with Romy, you, and you know, anybody else who wants to hop on board.
Oh, sounds good. We have Margaret. She's asking, would we look into alpacas in the future?
I mean, I have nothing against them.
I actually have a couple of alpaca projects going on now, and we're starting to see its viability. There's two things for folks who are interested. We have very small alpaca flocks in Canada. So the volume of wool that we have access to is small. So we would have to look for applications for that alpaca wool that are very bespoke. So we need very unique projects with a high sticker price on it, where a competitive price can be built in for alpaca. We can buy alpaca fiber out of the US for quite cheap. Now, I've been told that the prices are going somewhere between $10 and $20 US a pound in the US. But depending on who the farm is, etc., whether or not it's washed, you can probably get that down to $5 US a pound. But for us, with the small volume we have, $5 a pound is a lot. So you're going to have to really choose the right project for alpaca. But I would encourage everybody to start taking a closer look at their alpaca farms too, because they don't have anything, they don't have an outlet for their wool other than yarn at this point.
Yeah, and I can also speak to, we have used partnered with other natural fibers in the past, including alpaca. And for those of you who remember the 100-mile blazer produced by Smythe for Holt Renfrew, that actually contained some 100-mile alpaca as well, as part of the blend. So again, we're always supportive, even though the Campaign for Wool and the Canadian Wool Council's mandate is exclusively promoting sheep's wool. Wherever we have an opportunity to work with another natural fiber, we don't hesitate.
Thank you. Next question for Sasha from Karen. Will using Canadian wool involve a lot of farms or a few? Great to see that strengthen the market for Canadian wool. And do you ever foresee a mill in Canada to do your processing down the road?
I mean, it would be glorious to have that type of capability. But I mean, that I would have to enlist Jane for sure. And you know, there's obviously the scouring and multiple levels there. But you know, Matthew spoke about green energy, and the potential is amazing. So it would be a dream one day. And certainly, as I've learned from Anna, there are a lot of sheep farms in Ontario. So having a mill to process our incredible wool would be very, very good, I think.
For sure. Margaret is asking, you did touch on how your dyes, where you get your dyes and where they're derived from, and how she's asking where are your dyes derived from and how fast they for care and cleaning. I think that she means
Color fast.
Yeah, okay.
Color fast. Yeah, they are color fast. So they're meant for coats. This is coating wool. We have also tested it ourselves, and definitely. So where the dyes derive from, they are, I think, like your synthetic, probably laboratory dyes, but non-toxic grade, so low impact. I don't know. What was the other part of the question? Sorry. think maybe that was it.
Asking about care and cleaning for the
Oh, yeah. So I think definitely spot cleaning if there's just like a, something small, but over if you have a light color like the lavender behind, I'd say once a year eco dry cleaning would be great.
sounds good. Beautiful work for dark winters from Nancy. She's asking about the co in your name and where that is derived from.
Sorry, could you repeat that? The co?
Sorry, yes.
Oh, the company name. Oh, I see. So St. Marg.SCOT is the short form of St. Margaret of Scotland, and I call her my unofficial patron saint of fashion. So I think, when I started this whole process, I joked that to find that dream coat that was warm, but also different, we needed a miracle, a fashion miracle. And so just like how there's Saint Anthony that you might say a prayer to if you've lost something, you can, have fun and say a little prayer to Saint Margaret to find that dream piece that you're looking for.
Well, they don't need to search too far.
Or
And
the website.
Nancy has another part of this question. Did you find the search for mills in Canada difficult? I always see small sheep farmers / artisans looking for a good local mill to process their wool.
Yeah, interestingly, I started when just about when Wave had her grand opening. So it was really lovely to connect with Wave. We had a little bit of a discussion of how her mill could help with the coats, and we looked at the idea of batting as insulation. But ultimately, I was determined to use something from her mill, and so we have her lovely rope that is so beautiful and minimally processed, but retains that beauty of wool. And we use that for our toggles. But other than that, I found it quite difficult to find things online, which now as a new business, I can see why, because it requires SEO, it requires marketing to pop up online. And so I don't think that a lot of people have the time and investment to get themselves to show up on Google. So there's multiple factors here.
Thank you. And then Jenna's asking about if there'll be children sizes. I also want to ask, is there a potential for dog coats? Because I would love to buy one for my dog.
I've had so many people ask about children and pets, and so definitely I can't say no. I can't exclude it from the future, but not at the moment. We're still working on our human items or adult human items, but you never know.
Thank you. And then Karen's asking about, is there a strategic plan going towards a fully Canadian product? Is that even possible within the next 5 to 10 years?
I think it's possible. Right now, the liner is made of tencel, so we get tencel from Kendor, which is a Canadian supplier. The batting and the wool from the overcoat is from England. Right now, I'm working with Romy, and we might use batting from her farm. So that's really exciting. So that's one more component that's Canadian. I'm working with Jane to get the fabric milled using Canadian wool. So then that's the other component. So I definitely think it's possible to have an all Canadian product.
Sounds great. That's what we're hoping for. Holly's asking, were you working as a scientist as you were developing your business?
Yeah, no. So when I officially started the business, it was toward the end of COVID, and I was on leave. And this October, I actually just resigned from my research position at SickKit. So having to make some difficult choices.
Thank you. Are there any more questions before we wrap up? Put in the chat, raise your hand. We'll give it a minute.
Sasha, I know it can be a tough decision when you're having gone through something similar myself, when you're making the transition to a small operation to then putting everything into it. But I think my aunt, who had a business, described it best, where she always wanted 4 children, and instead she had 3 children and a business, because basically that's the kind of engagement that's required to make a business successful. So so don't envy those choices, but as long as you're doing what you're passionate about, then that's the right choice, if that is any help.
Great question.
It definitely feels like another child, for sure.
Yeah.
In addition to the 2 I already have.
Right. And it's just as impatient. And I don't think it ever grows up from that stage either.
Thank you, Matthew.
So great. We'll finish off on this question. I haven't had time to go through the website, but where does one buy the coats? I'm not located in Toronto. I'll put the link for your website because I know you can buy it there, and then you can expand on where they can buy it.
Thank you so much.
So just the website is the best.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, we don't have a brick and mortar store. We are in a few stores. A few stores carry our coats in Toronto, Fig Tree and Lemonwood Luxury, and we have a few pop-up events coming up, which are really exciting. And mainly it's just our website, not just, but it's our e-commerce website, which free shipping in Canada. There you go.
Fabulous.
Is it a bit of a limited run every year?
Definitely. Our mill, it's a very small mill, and we've requested more wool, but they'll send us what they have. And I actually love that relationship because each coat is very special, and our original heritage coats are actually stamped with their edition number, just because I wanted people to know that there are only 1 or 2 or 3 of these in the world, and that is it. So so it is very limited.
Yes, she's already sold out of my green coat, but we'll get more, won't we?
Sounds good. Thank you. And seeing as there's no more questions, last chance, I will get Matthew to wrap it up.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. And thank you to you, Sasha, for such a succinct and colorful presentation. I think it's a perfect Wool Month presentation. As I said at the beginning, I think what you're doing in your brand really sums up what the Campaign for Wool is all about, in terms of promoting the best of what wool can become through beautiful design. So I want to thank you for speaking. I want to thank all of our guests for joining us today. Stay tuned for our next Spinning Yarn speaker series. I forgot to mention as well, one of the other projects I forgot to mention that will be out in the next couple weeks is we have a special limited edition coronation blanket that is being produced using the design that the Canadian government created for our patrons' coronation. It will be a blanket made. The design includes all of the floral emblems of the provinces and territories. So again, even if you're not a big royalist, it'll be a really lovely piece, and it's made in true Commonwealth fashion. Again, we were talking about supply chains. You can't always get what you want in Canada, but in order to get those beautiful designs made into a beautiful blanket, we're producing it at the same mill that produces the Hudson's Bay blankets, which is located here in the UK, and it'll be made with 100% merino wool. So we are really excited for that piece, and will be available for sale. And that will also be, again, limited edition. Only 100 pieces will ever be made, with all the profits going immediately right back into our Wool Innovation Fund. So thank you. So please watch out for that. Look at the coats. Look at the whole Renfrew collection. You've all got a lot of shopping to do, so I know, but remember, Christmas is coming. This is the time. Our message has always been, don't buy as much, don't buy as often, but when you do, buy better and buy quality, buy beautiful wool products. They're going to stand the test of time, that are going to look great, and that are going to last. And then, of course, as we know, a couple generations down the line, when it finally wears through, you can put it in your garden and it'll help the grass grow, the sheep feed on to grow more wool. And that's what makes wool such an incredible product. So again, I also, just before we go, I want to say a very special shout out to Alyssa for all of her hard work in driving this speaker series. This has been your baby for quite some time, and very sadly for us, not sadly for her, she has accepted a new position, and so unfortunately we'll be leaving the Campaign for Wool. But I want to thank Alyssa on behalf of our membership and all of our supporters for all the hard work that you've done and continue to do to help us promote Canadian wool. And we wish you the best in your future endeavors. So thank you very much, Alyssa.
Thank you, and thank you, Sasha.
Have a great day, everyone, and have a wonderful wool month. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.